So I want to thank everyone for coming here tonight. We wanted to be able to just offer this opportunity to answer questions about the direction we're moving in with trying to enforce the cell phone policy that was voted in by the school board members in the middle of June. So tonight here, myself, Joel Smith, principal at Mount Blue High School. I have with me Greg Henderson, assistant principal, Todd Devens, assistant principal, and Galen Darnable, head of Foster CTE. He's the director. And so we just wanted to give you guys, folks, an opportunity to get information about this. Also here, I have a couple board members, Jeff Barnum and Deanna. What? Katie Martinez. Yeah, sorry. And then Chris Elkington up there in the back. So we'll go ahead and we'll get this presentation started. So one of the things that we're doing this year, as you know, the school has moved forward with a cell phone policy. It has adopted and updated their cell phone policy. And so this year, our school will be using the Yonder program to make our phone free, to uphold the cell phone policy that was, like I said, put in place by the RSU 9 Board of Directors. So every day student will bring an assigned pouch, and we do have some pouches that we can demonstrate. Folks, you can see what they look like and kind of get a sense. Students will bring these to school. They'll be in their possession, much like the laptop or the iPads. They are theirs to keep, and you know, they're responsible for those. So that's up to them to bring them to school every day and make sure that they're in good working condition.
And then the thing that I want to recognize here is that we all experience the distraction and to some degree the comfort that a cell phone can provide to you. When you go to a doctor's office now, there's no magazine rack. They're gone because everybody's sitting in their seats looking at their phones, playing Angry Birds or whatever is happening in 2025. And I think, I really support the work of the board to get to a phone-free school because it allows us to place enhanced value on the core reason for why we have students every day. We want them to be successful academically, we want them to be successful personally and socially, and removing the distraction, in some degree, the comfort that a phone can provide is going to help us move in that direction. I don't want to be too doom and gloom about phones, but there is this very real experience that has happened that as smartphones came out, that an increase in adolescent depression and anxiety has absolutely corresponded. And we see that in school every day. Teenagers in 2025 are not the same teenagers that we experienced in 2000 or 1995. It's a different student and a different adolescent that we have. And so we do see the impact, the negative, sometimes positive, but we do see that impact every single day with our adolescents around the impact, mental health impact that phones provide every single day. And then lastly, these are some great statistics. Yes, these are provided by Yonder, but also referenced specifically as far as where they're pulled from. But 3 hours of daily social media use doubles anxiety and depression among our youth. There's a 15-point decrease in scores of math assessments when students are distracted by phones. The one that I think we see every single day that we struggle with is 20 minutes. 20 minutes is the time that it takes for a student to regain focus after being distracted by something on their phone. Last year, I had a situation, it was a super busy day, I'm dealing with students. I end up with 2 students' phones who are involved in a conflict. I've confiscated their phones to help bring the temperature down a little bit. Both of these phones still had their notifications turned on, and I had them both in my pockets. Usually I get rid of them up in the front office, but on this day it was busy, and I had these 2 students' phones in my pockets. I was absolutely gobsmacked, amazed at the number of notifications these phones were getting while in my pockets. They both happened to be on vibrate. I bet I got 75 notifications in a 1 hour period or less. They're just bzz, 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 just constant. And I think that I'm somebody who's pretty much in touch with kids and habits and working with kids and phones and all that stuff. I had absolutely no idea the sheer quantity of notifications and distractions that kids are receiving. Those two kids might be extreme examples that don't represent, kind of like the middle of the road student, but there's no questioning what happened on that day. Two kids involved in a conflict, I have their phones, and they are just humming for an hour straight. So 20 minutes to refocus after a distraction from a cell phone, and 68%, the percent of students who report that devices are distracting. Kids are telling us themselves, yes, my phone is a distraction. Do we want to continue that distraction if we don't have to? Bans, the title of this is a little bit exciting. Bans alone are not enough. But the real message here is that unless you have a tool to support the ban is just text and not actually real. If you call schools all over central Maine, everybody's going to tell you, oh yeah, we don't let students use their phones in school. But if you are in that classroom, this is a fantastic picture. This is real. I mean, this doesn't come from Mount Blue High School, but this picture is real. A student sitting in class, he's got his novels, probably an English class, he's reading the novel. The teacher sees the other side of this, but what do we see? He's on TikTok. That happens all over the place. I have a 12-year-old child, I have a 14-year-old child. In their school, cell phones are banned. I know that doesn't happen because my kids tell me. They're not allowed to take their phones to school, we don't let them. But I know, my kids come home, oh yeah, my daughter explained this exact thing. We were working on our laptops in class, but so-and-so was looking at TikTok, and there was some mostly naked lady on there. I'm like, great, thanks for letting me know. So the thing that Yonder does is provide us the opportunity to use a tool to actually create a phone-free experience and not have it just be empty text.
We've always had a cell phone policy at the high school, in the district, actually, and it really wasn't working. It was always with our teachers, students could have their phones with permission. Problem becomes, our biggest issue was cell phones, really. That comes down to everything we do. Teachers are starting their class, first thing they have to do is try to rein kids in and say, hey, let's pay attention, let's get ready for the class. And it starts right off as an adversarial thing when they start saying, I need your phone, I need your phone. No, you don't have my phone, F you, and next thing you know, they're in their office. So this takes the conflict away from the teachers. We don't want an adversarial. We don't want them to have to be the people that are taking care of this. This program will allow us to, it comes in the morning, it's in the pouch, now they don't have to worry about it. They show up to class, they're ready to learn. That's the first thing they do. Sit down and learn. There's not this adversarial thing about, I need your phone. No, you can't have it. So I think this is going to end our cycle of conflict, and hopefully the students will have more time engaged in the classroom materials where the goal really is.
What the Yonder does, it backs up the policy. But at the same time, if you look at this, it says the focus, creativity, and relief. And the one thing I want you to focus on is the relief. I was talking to Katie before we got started here, and students have a high degree of anxiety with that phone. Greg mentioned the buzzing. The students hear that. Whether or not they look at that phone doesn't matter. The distraction has already happened. And they're focused now not on learning algebra, but what was happening. Is somebody talking about me? Is one of my friends going to the bathroom? Any one of a number of things. And that takes them out of the learning equation for, at a minimum, a half an hour. So before they get refocused.
One of the things, just to add to that, when Galen and I were looking at the Yonder program, Galen, myself, a teacher, a couple school board members had the opportunity to go to Morse High School, who implemented the Yonder program last year. And I had the opportunity with Galen to talk to some students there, and what they had said was they didn't feel the need to respond during the day, because they knew that all their friends, and that's really part of it, is like they feel compelled. My friend just texted me, I've got to respond back, even though I'm taking this math test, I need to respond to them. They don't feel that pressure anymore. So that relief is partly in just the need to respond.
Another thing he said was we became the school of hello. Yonder is not something new. This is rolling out. I think there's 5 schools statewide and 17 in New England. I heard that number today. I was just at a conference with other CTE directors, and that number was thrown out to me. So we're basically using a tool that's available to us to support the policy. And what I want to talk about that policy a little bit is that Foster CTE Center, which is part of the Mount Blue campus community, even though a majority or at least half our students come from sending schools, all of our students are going to adhere to that policy. So the sending school students from Spruce Mountain, from Mount Abram High School, and from Rangeley are all going to receive their pouch. And when they arrive here on a bus, they're going to come in through door 1. We'll show you the process of that in a little bit, but they're all going to put their phones in a pouch, clip it in, and head to their tech program. That is not going to change. So we're just going to follow the RSU 9 policy, and all the other schools have been informed that this is going to take place. The results are just staggering, really. The ones that I really want to highlight are the one at the bottom. 84% saw an increase or positive change in student engagement. Student engagement is a buzzword now in education. It's what all educators want to accomplish, because if students are engaged, they're learning, they're active, and they're more likely to retain the information that's being delivered. 72% saw a positive change in student behavior, the things that Todd was just talking about. We take phones out of the equation, and I would say a majority of behaviors that result in punitive punishment, like suspensions or in-school suspensions, will go away. 68% saw a positive change in academic performance. And that's what we're here for. We want our students to succeed.
Kind of to talk about how the Yonder pouch works. So at the beginning of the day, students are going to come in. We're going to have, just like this, a white table set up right at the front. We'll have probably 2 or 3 tables. When we went to Morse had 3 white tables identical to this, and on each table they had 2 or 3 of these bases right here. And it's simply a matter of the student has it locked overnight. They come in, they hit this, and the button pops and releases. And when they hit it, if it doesn't pop initially, you just push the button and it opens. Mr. Demmons has demonstrated, he's got his phone, he takes it out, you can put it in, however. But the idea is, once my phone goes in, I then have to just pin it and it's locked. And then at the end of the day, when they're exiting the building, they're going to walk by a station at the exits. And again, hit it from this, pop it green, and then this will go there. Pull the phone out. The idea is, though, when they leave, we're going to really stress with students that they need to make sure that the pin is engaged and it's locked when they go home at night, because the pin, that just protects the pin when it's not in use. So that's kind of how Yonder works. It's really simple. It's no different than the locking devices at Kohl's department store when, you go to the register and they unlock the magnet. Yeah.
Hi, so will they be carrying these with them from class to class, or is it going to be something where it goes in the pouch and then they're expected to put it in their locker? That's
a great question. I'm glad you asked that, because the idea with this is anytime I've had to confiscate a student's phone, that is a real anxiety producing event for the student. The idea with this phone, their phone is with them. They're never going to have the phone taken away. The phone is going to be in their bag. Now, if they have like a burner phone, a second phone that doesn't work, and that's the one, and then they're in class and they're doing the old, phone behind the book trick, and we see that, we will take the phone at that point. And then we've got a whole set of consequences for that if that should happen. But the idea is we want them to have their phones. We want all students to have their phones, and at the end of the day, they can unlock it. That's really the intent.
Unless there's some kind of problem with the pouch, once we issue those pouches to the students, they're theirs for the year.
Yeah.
If they get damaged or something, then of course we'll work that out. But the idea is you get issued your pouch, it's yours, it's got a unique number on it that we know, number 1122 is yours, and that's it for the year until we collect it at the end.
Another question, sorry, I'm a question person. Piggybacked onto that, if a child has to go to the bathroom, are they expected to keep the pouch? They're expected to keep the pouch in the classroom, they're not going to bring it with them, so they just sneak and unlock it, bring it to the bathroom, do a little texty.
So these things right here, Morse, when we went there, kids tried to get in, they couldn't. They couldn't get in. And the ones that did, they damaged it, and now they owe $40 or whatever, you know, the cost for this. The idea is, there's only a limited amount of these, and we have them in the main office. So these aren't just floating around the building, but they're only, at the end of the day, this will be taken care of. And we will have some mounted in various spots, but if we have this mounted permanently, this comes off. So during the day, the mount is still there, but we just put this back on. So yeah, they could take it with them, but they're not gonna be able to get into this unless they break it.
Do they need anyone to be there with the mount? Or when they're leaving for the day, do they just go over to the mount and open it up?
That's a great question, Mr. Walker. So
Good thing you said that.
at each station, there's gonna be supervision, whether it's a teacher or whether it's an administrator. We're gonna be at those stations when they're locking and unlocking. The only time that we won't be at a station, we plan on having, in a Morse and Yonder, they had a magnet outside of the building that is unlocked. So like, I'm gonna miss the bus, I gotta go home. It's locked, and now you've got this thing that's locked. When at 4 or 5 o'clock when mom and dad get home, if they so choose, they could come back to the magnet, which is outside the building, and unlock if they need to. During the day, that mounting station is locked. It's locked back up it's just the opposite. But to the point of when students are arriving and leaving, we will have staff like at the station. So I picture in the morning they're coming in, myself, Mr. Dalrymple, at one of these tables, just greeting the kids like we normally do, but we're at the tables, just making sure they're pouching up and making sure that they're put away.
So when a student leaves at the end of the day or part of the day, or they get dismissed,
Yep.
like we have students that are only there for part of the day, one of those is going to be available in the office, and students will have to sign out like they usually do?
Yeah, so typically every time a student comes and goes in the building, they have to sign out in the main office. This will be mounted in the main office right above the sign-out sheet. So Kim, Amanda, Carrie, who are in the main office, they will be there supervising the students, locking and unlocking.
And that same thing is going to apply to sending school students. Our sending school students are released at 11:40 where they jump on a bus and head back to their sending school. They're gonna filter through the office and undo the pouch.
Field trips too, sorry, is that the same school for field trips?
Yeah, so the conversation around field trips is like this. If Doc Millette, she's a nurse science teacher, and she does this one period field trip to Flint Woods, and she's looking at whatever. She's gone for a period. The likelihood that Doc Millette is gonna want those cell phones out of the pouch is pretty slim. But last year we had a field trip that went to the Maine Museum of Art in Portland. The likelihood that teacher probably wants them to have their phone, and I would feel comfortable with them because they're arriving back at 5 o'clock at night, they may not have their phone locked. I think it's going to be situational depending upon the length and the distance of where this event is occurring. And like with every field trip that we send out, there's a parent permission slip that will be clear in the parent guidelines or the field trip guidelines, where your expectation is for phone on that field trip. But there are going to be some field trips like, that might go, Foster Tech might go to the Farmington Fair, and that field trip is the entire day. Director Dalrymple may say, phones can go.
I had a question kind of along all these lines, kind of a logistical question. Like, I haven't been here in years at dismissal, but like, is this gonna be a bottleneck? Are kids gonna be missing classes? And what about sports teams when they leave early?
So, two great questions. When we went to Morse, that's why I wanted to go to Morse, because I wanted to see what this thing looks like. And in the morning when students are arriving, it's a staggered arrival. So it was pretty smooth. The afternoon, Eric Varney, the principal there, was saying, these kids want to get out of here. They're not going to dilly. They're going to be there. They're going to get done. And we have 8 of the round devices. We have
portable ones.
6 of the portable that he's got in there. These are more, can be permanently mounted. We have 8 of those, and we have 4 that are in a case. And like I said, we'll have 1 outside. We haven't figured out if we're going to keep the other 3 that are mounting like in the building, and then we just unlock it at the end of the day, but it's in the building unlocked. We haven't landed on those 3 devices there. But we have plenty, Yonder has an algorithm basically on how many cases do we have and how many magnets do you need for flow. And you know, these devices started at concert venues where 50,000 people were coming and going. That's where the Yonder cut its teeth, was with concerts. And I went to a concert a few years ago, and it was like magnet in, magnet, and there were 3,000 people in this venue, and there was.
And I would add to that, because the first time I ever heard about Yonder was when I went to a concert, and I go to a lot of concerts. I've only been to one where they used Yonder, and it was the artist's decision because they wanted you focused on the show, not on your phone or taking video or live streaming, whatever. They just wanted your attention on the performance. And when I was there, like, I don't really consider myself to be a heavy phone user, but I learned that I'm a compulsive time checker. I had no idea until I'm there. I'm like, oh, I can't check the time. Like, what time is it? You know what I mean? Like, oh, I can't. And I'm so bad with compulsive time checking. If I can't see my phone, I'll look over the shoulder of somebody else at their phone to see what time it is. And I had no idea I had this habit until I was using a Yonder pouch at a concert. And I will say, when that venue, and it was not a large venue, but about 3,000 people, when it emptied, it emptied. People wanted to get their phone back, and the stations worked fast, and we were out.
And I think the same thing's gonna happen here at the end of the day. I talked to Tim Gagnon. He's the director of Bath Tech, which is co-located with Morse High School. And he said the students become very skillful at hitting that, and one swing, cut, boom, they're gone.
And
So
then,
the coaches and our athletic director will have access to this? So if there's an away game and it's at 1:30, Ms. Pratt will probably be out there checking all the field hockey drills, make sure you've got your things set, or the whatever football's going away. She'll have that, maybe there'll be 2 out there, so if they need more.
and again, like if that kid gets on the bus to go to a cross-country meet, and they're like, oh shoot, I didn't unlock. When they arrive back at the school at 9 o'clock at night, that device is outside the school. They're gonna know where it is, and they can go online.
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, sir.
But I also wanted to see if you had a bunch more presentation. Would you like questions for the end, or?
Yeah.
This is a small, we were anticipating questions, and we were gonna keep it to the end, but this is an intimate enough group, so I don't think we're good. You can ask questions, that's fine, so.
All right. My question is for some percentage of kids that are gonna either bring in a second phone or sneak through the line and give it a false tap or something like that.
Mhm.
Do you have any greater buy-in from teachers to enforce that have understandably not been eager to do cell phone enforcement in past years, so that they might do a little bit of educating? Or do you have any plans to give them any more direction to
So-
enforcement?
When we come back, one of the first day's trainings for our staff is gonna be similar to this, where we're talking about a little bit different. It's gonna look more like, what does it look like to pouch? How do we enforce that sort of thing? So there'll be, that training will happen. But I also think that our staff has been really eager for this to happen. And you know, what's different? There was a ban before with teacher discretion, and what's really different? What's different now? And what I've heard over and over again, this becomes, when you see this one phone, that's an outlier. Whereas right now, if you walk through the halls at Mount Blue, there are 750 students here, there are 700 phones out. So whereas the flip side, at Morse High School, it became apparent that at Morse, it was, on that day we were there in December, there were no phones. And the one phone you saw was like, whoa, that stands out. And one thing, it's not like everyone's walking in like this.
Cool, so you understand my concern. I don't necessarily blame the teachers
Yeah.
turning a blind eye, because
Yeah.
they'd like to maybe get a little bit of their plan done for the day. They don't want to fight for cell
That's-
phones all period, but so I'd like to hope that when they see that one cell phone, they will
Yeah.
interrupt their plan.
And the idea, that slide that Mr. Demmons pointed out, this over and over again, based on Yonder's research and what they've seen in their implementation, is this ends the conflict cycle. Because now it's like, that's an anomaly you've seen it one. And it's not to say, Yonder doesn't disguise it, Morse didn't disguise it. They're like, let's say you have half of your population that's using this, the other half of the population is just like, I'm gonna leave it in my car. I'm gonna leave it at home. And that's what happens. And then, we're not gonna fight with them, we're not gonna search bags, okay, I believe you, until you're in Mr. Reynolds' class, and he sees the phone out, and he's like, go to the office. That's the reality of what's gonna happen.
It's the only way it would work.
Yeah, just go to the office, because that's the way, that's what we're gonna,
So, like, do they get a detention?
yeah, that's a great question, so,
Yeah, we spoke about obviously needing to make sure that expectations for following our Yonder system are super clear. And I think the simplest way to answer that question is we expect our students to follow the district's policies and our school rules every single day. And it's no different with Yonder. And so, we did update our handbook, and there is a section in there around Yonder and expectations for students. And yes, there is a sequence of responses that may start with a warning. Hey, you didn't use your pouch, your phone's staying in the office, make sure you bring your pouch tomorrow. That's, if you want to call it a disciplinary response, maybe, because they had to leave the phone out in the office. And then it does ramp up like, kind of traditional discipline may start with, detention. We're talking about using extended detentions, maybe a 3-hour detention for students that are persistently not following expectations. And then it turns into just kind of, if there's a student that refuses to follow the program, then we're talking about, this is insubordination and your just refusal to follow, and disciplinary responses would be appropriately more significant. So it just kind of follows into, we expect our students to follow our rules, and we'll hold them accountable if they don't, through a spectrum of responses.
So
But we've
you're
clarified
asking-
that in the handbook.
Are you asking the students right from the beginning if they have cell phones, or are you just saying, like, catching them as they pull them out?
Yes. So ideally, when students are arriving in the morning, like Joel was speaking about, they're being supervised by staff who is reminding them that they need to pouch up, put your phones and smartwatches in pouches, let's go, blah, blah, blah. And then, should they not, when they're observed, then the staff member is gonna refer them to the office. Mr. Demons and I will work through whatever situation may come up with that student.
on the opening days, we plan on going through this with students.
Oh, yeah.
Because this is gonna be a shock, and so it's just gonna be a big change for them. So our plan is to, again, give them a presentation similar to this, but geared to them, and explaining pouch up. That's the expectation.
Right, but
And-
not everybody has a cell phone.
And if
Oh,
they
yeah,
don't,
right.
right, exactly, and so if you don't have a cell phone, you don't have a cell phone. But you've got the pouch, in the event at Christmas, you get a brand new iPhone, you've got the pouch, this is your pouch. And then the idea is, their expectation is to pouch, and if they're in class, or they're in a hallway, hey, whoa, you got a phone, it's just, no one has an excuse, it is a cell phone school, it is not like, Mr. Demons has permission. No, that permission doesn't exist.
And I think that the policy was well crafted because it provides us with ultimate clarity. We are a phone-free school.
Right.
There's not a circumstance where you have your phone. So there's no debate about it, there's no gray zone, there's nothing. We don't do phones at Mount Blue High School.
So if
it
they
is-
were to just leave it in their backpack and not get caught with it, it wouldn't be a problem.
We're not searching backpacks.
Yeah.
Theoretically, yes.
Correct, yeah. I mean, I have a family member that attends Morse High School, and so every time I see her, I'm like, hey, how's the Yonder thing going at your school? And the last time I talked to her, she said a lot of people just don't bring their phones in the school anymore because they know it's easier. I don't have to wait for, even though it's only going to be 10 seconds, I can just walk out the door and my phone's in the car. Or maybe I only live a couple minutes down the street. It's not really worth it for me to bring it. I think you had a question and then. Other questions? I'm sorry. Did you have one? No? Yes?
All right.
I just have something to go with that, because I was in the
Okay.
talks. Because Morse collected data, and so at the beginning of the school year, they would watch 3 minutes and then count how many out of 100 kids, how many did we see use the pouch? And at the beginning, it was really high. And by the middle of the year, it was 30%. They still had the benefits of they weren't bringing their phones out during class. They just were either leaving it in the backpack, leaving it in the car, it wasn't an issue. They didn't have to see them do the thing anymore, because the kids were learning how to have self-control.
And again, we're not searching for them. The issue becomes when you're in an English class, and you're supposed to be reading The Great Gatsby, and you're on the phone. That's the issue, and that's what we want to see go away. So the Yonder pouch is a tool to help us get to that point.
So I have a couple friends that work at Morse and Bat. And they actually said that the teachers were actually more engaged because of this as well, because they were less distracted, not because they were on their cell phone, but they weren't fighting this battle, so the teachers were more engaged as a byproduct of this. The question that I do have is smartwatches linked to their phones?
Yeah, and pouch.
So smartwatches and,
Yep. As part of the policy change,
yeah.
the policy language is smartwatches and phones go in the pouch. And that's just the way it is. They pull it out at the end of the day.
I think I mentioned this before, but the pouches are assigned to every single student, whether or not they say they have a phone or don't have a phone, whatever. You're getting a pouch. You'll have a unique ID on it that is yours. It is assigned to you, and you're responsible for that as a student for the entire year. Did you have?
For the freshmen that are coming in, I see that there's gonna be badges. Are those badges similar to what the children will have, or are they gonna have names? Like, how are they supposed to keep track of which one's theirs?
Yeah, so each one will have, these ones aren't marked yet, but we will mark. We have a couple here.
That's horrible.
That's okay.
We just literally, it's a Sharpie. That's what we put on here, and that's Morse, that's the route Morse went, and it was a relatively inexpensive fix, and it worked.
And if you use the IDs, there's a pouch on the back for the ID, but kids can open that pouch.
Right.
And you
Take
take
someone
out
else's
an
ID.
ID.
Right.
How
So
about someone else's?
the work that we've done with Yonder, I'm super impressed with everything, except that they won't supply these with a barcode on them that has a serial number. So we're forced to actually hand number every single one of them. That's the only thing I don't like. And I would mention, Joel shows this pouch right here. We already numbered these. These are Velcro ones. When we talked about we're a phone-free school, there's no exceptions. We have, I think, three students who have medical monitoring devices on their phones. And so for those students who we know about, they will have a Velcro pouch so that they have immediate access if they need to check their blood sugar because they're not feeling okay. So we have a tiny number of students who still have a pouch, but immediate access for a documented medical reason.
And are there any other magnets that would open this, other than that specific?
Yonder has told us, and well, first of all, Morse and Yonder both said, kids are gonna try to find every magnet, and they're designed for that magnet. And they try. You gotta love ingenuity, but to this point, there's not one that works without damaging it. I say that without damaging the device.
There's a slide later on about damage.
Yeah.
In case of emergencies,
Right here.
Let's go. Perfect.
Perfect, thank you for the segue. So what happens if there's an emergency at school? How will my student be able to contact me if there's a lockdown? So simple answer is this. If we have lockdowns, and we do them occasionally, because we have to do drills and practice, make sure students know the procedure. If we ever do that, we're going to do the same thing we always do. Let kids know there's a lockdown. The classroom will follow the procedures, they'll shut the doors, make sure the doors are covered, lights are off, and everybody's quiet, hiding in a corner. I didn't put that on there. Students will keep their phones in their pouches, where they should be. And why do we keep them locked? Because basically, everybody's had situations happen, and it'll take, a perfect example, sometimes we'll go into a lockdown because we don't want kids in the halls, or we'll just want to keep, maybe we have a medical emergency in the food court, and it turns into, oh my gosh, there's someone here, and the stories just go. They go and go. So it gets rid of the false information, doesn't create panic. Sometimes phones make noise, we know that. So that'll keep any noise from happening. And then the big thing is, really, whenever there's an emergency, people should be listening to the adult in the room who is telling them this is what we need to do. Also allows the responders to be able to actually communicate and do what they have to do. So after the emergency, most important thing, we'll always, you guys know you get information from the district. You'll get something from the district saying what happened, and you'll get all the information. If we deem it necessary, we will have our staff unlock the pouches so students can reach out to their parents. The only time I can think of that is if this truly was a real emergency, something really major happened. We would try to make sure everybody got access to their phones at that point.
A couple things to add to that, and I think this is the biggest concern. I think most parents are in agreement that cell phone needs to go away during school. I think that's something that is agreed upon. I think this is where parents are the most concerned, is the emergency. And I'll just give you two instances that I've seen firsthand where there was an emergency situation and the exact wrong thing happened with the phone. Last year we had a fire alarm go off and it was a faulty sensor on the 3rd floor. So it was not an emergency other than there's dust in the system. We had to evacuate. A student here texted their dad to say the school is on fire. Now you can imagine what that does to a parent. It's false information. The student doesn't know what's going on, but they're making an assumption. This is real because it's not a drill. My teacher doesn't know about this. And so their anxiety is high, but that's how the false information train goes. The other incident was a little closer to home, the Lewiston shooting. My son was at Bates, and he was locked down for that night during the shooting. And he was locked down, and he's hunkered in a room, like completely quiet and suppressed. Well, he's getting alerts on his phone from the New York Times because they've got someone in the same library that's on the phone with them, telling them everything about Bates in their security process. So he's a little freaked out because someone's in the library telling the New York Times, who's putting this across the nation, real-time stuff about where all the students at Bates are. And so he's thinking, that's a real security threat. And so it goes to the whole point of law enforcement don't want people in an emergency on the phone, contrary to what everyone thinks. That's the reality. And Ken Charles, our chief of police here in Farmington, kind of wrote a letter to the superintendent when the policy process was going, saying as much. It's best if we're not on phones.
So cell phones, they can cause harm actually during emergencies. Distracted, people aren't listening. They're concerned about texting someone or calling the New York Times, give them updates. Communication jamming, that's a real thing. If there's a high volume of cell phone calls, we only have a tower that handles so much in this area. It just jams it. And the real people that need to communicate, law enforcement, first responders, are not able to do what they need to do. Noise risk, I already talked about that in the last slide. People can hear things, phones make noise, some people don't always mute it. The other thing is, like Joel kind of alluded to about the New York Times, but differently, some people that want to do harm to others might be watching things on social media and might be friends of people that they're harming, and if they're doing stuff on their phone, we'll know where they are. Maybe they've shared locations and they can tell where people are. So the big thing here, it's a good quote. Last thing we want is students on their cell phones in the midst of an emergency. They should be taking direction from the principal, the teachers, and the leaders in the school to get them to the place of safety. It's important.
All right, some simple questions. My student forgets their pouch. What happens? I think I mentioned before. Student shows up at school, they don't have their pouch, they just leave their phone in the office that day. Not a big deal. It's not discipline. We're a phone-free school. Your phone stays in the office, pick it up on your way out. If for some reason that becomes a habitual thing, well then that's kind of a slightly different conversation. And then, damage, lost or stolen pouches. When we issue the Yonder pouches to students, it's like any school-issued supply. Textbook, iPad, whatever we might be issuing you. You take responsibility of it. If you lose it, you damage it, and it can't be repaired, then, you have to pay for it. And so that's what will happen there. When we're done here, of course, you guys will be able to check out the equipment, and you'll see there is a pin, a guiding pin. And I think that is the spot that those can get bent or whatever. So you just got to be a little bit mindful about what's happening, taking care of the actual device. They unlock their phone. I mean, we talked about following the rules. I mentioned before, it's just following the expectations that we have for students, and the expectations that we put in place for Yonder are like anything else. Follow the rules, we'll work with you on it, and if we need to have a more serious conversation or disciplinary response, then we will.
We kind of hit upon if there's a student or someone that has a medical need, we do have pouches that can fit that. I think over and over, the number of students that actually need access to a Velcro pouch because of a medical need is very slim. But we do have that in that event, and we can use that. The other thing is with tracking, if they put their phone on airplane mode and you're concerned about where they are, that's another thing. I know those are the concerns that parents have. Emergencies, can I track them? What if I have my son or daughter has a medical issue. We do have, there are technologies in place, and again, if you put the phone on airplane mode, you can see where they are. So,
We just, along those lines, if students ever need to get a hold of anybody, they can come to the office. We just had a new phone system put in, and we have phones put in the office. We've always had a phone in the main office for students, but this extra additional phones have been put there, so if students need to come down, they need to call Mom, make sure I get a bus note because I'm going to Johnny's tonight. Remember, we're gonna go play in the park. I don't know. But
with that new phone upgrade too, we put extra phones in the office, so now there are 2 phones in the main office, and there's one in the administrative office where Todd and Greg live, so there are extra phones that are not necessarily dedicated to the secretary. They're sitting on the counter, so they come down, they see Trixie in the office there, they can say, hey Trixie, can I use the phone? And she'll say, yeah, sure. And that's, that's not something we're gonna be policing. Now, if every day they're coming down at 10:15 on the dot and we hear conversations to DoorDash, that's a problem. But other than that, they'll have access to their phone to call parents and make arrangements if something happens with a ride, so.
Are you comfortable if students are like emailing parents? I know that there was a parent who said she hasn't allowed cell phones for her kids, and the best way they've always learned to communicate is just a quick email. And is that okay to do?
Absolutely, and so actually I talked to Kevin today because I wanted to be clear on what exactly the technology department's best practice is, and they said exactly.
Kevin is who?
Kevin Bremner is the director of technology here at RSU 9. He's in charge of all the iPads and all of the other devices in the district. And I was asking Kevin, what is the best form of communication in the absence of a phone? And he suggested email it's end-to-end, it's great, it works, and it's tried and trusted, and it's not going anywhere. So it's just gonna be a change. Instead of going to your text and seeing your son or daughter, it's just going to the email, checking your email. Oh, Julian texted me today.
And just another thing that popped up in talking with some families, there was someone who said there's no phones in classrooms, but there is a phone in each classroom, right?
Yeah.
In case there was an emergency.
In this building, literally, there is a phone in some closets. And you can see right over here in the forum, this space here has a phone. We have, I think, except the hallways and the food court, there is a phone in every space in this building. So they have access. And as we mentioned, the phones in the building and the district-wide have been upgraded this year. It's a much better system than what we've had. Already we've seen fewer issues and outages, so we're confident in the phone system we've just installed.
I think it will be helpful for families to get a little bit old school and try to have schedules done at least the day before or at least the morning of about what's happening that day, to try to reduce the amount of communication that needs to happen during the day. But we also know that plans change all the time. If you have athletes and they're outside and the game gets canceled and they're not going to Camden, then just today our athletic director was working with information technology as well as office secretary about making sure that we have a very clear system that gets that information about athletic changes to families and students simultaneously, so both parties know what's going on. The other thing about the new phone system is that we have made some adjustments to the initial calling tree, the answering tree, when you call the number, to really allow you to get to the right person right away instead of always having to talk to the office first. So I think we'll gain some efficiencies with when you make a phone call to the school, you're probably going to get the right person initially.
So that email question begs another obvious question that I guess I might anticipate. I'm not real familiar with the iPad, with the access they have. Are we just kicking the can to where they can use any Gmail?
I would say that there's still an element of, I can text you and say, hey, let's meet up in the bathroom, or email, that's a similar, but I would say part of the phone is not necessarily just the communication tool of me talking to you. The bigger issue that we see on the daily is Snap, TikTok, Instagram. So to your point, yeah, there'll still be communication, which that's gonna happen, like let's meet up. But what's gonna go away is the It's just the stuff on the constant, like, I make a post, and then that meme goes around the school making fun of Mr. Henderson. You know, that is in essence, unless, you know, there are still ways to do it, but it takes the ease of that out. The other thing that I would point out is that when there is a situation, when a student is in crisis and they're not in a good space, it's real easy. I don't like him and he's looking like a fool, and I can just video. That's just part of it. So it's not just about me communicating with Mr. Reynolds and it's a larger issue, and it's all of those alerts that Mr. Henderson, it's all of those things. So to your point, yeah, there is a certain amount of, there's still gonna be inappropriate stuff. I know back in the 90s, I think back in the 90s, it was little paper footballs. And those were going around the classroom.
I welcome that.
But yeah, there is some communication that's
Sometimes notice that let's meet in the bathroom.
Yes. So to your point, yes, it's gonna still be there, but we're getting rid of a whole other layer of problems too.
I would say as a teacher, the kids aren't, it's much easier to police and monitor the iPads than it is the phones, because they're much bigger. And I would say 8 out of 10 kids would rather not be on their iPads, because it's not as easy. Yes, there's gonna be some emailing, some stuff going back and forth, but it's gonna cut it down dramatically, because they're forced to use their iPads in those situations, and kids aren't checking their emails every 30 seconds and getting the notifications that they are on their phones.
And can I still connect? I know in middle school, my daughter could connect her iPhone to her iPad.
I think right now, Mr. Bremner, Kevin Bremner, he's every year there's just something new comes out and they have to chase, and so I don't think those features are going to be quite as accessible for students. So I'm thinking that may have gone away, but I know Kevin is constantly, you do one block and then yeah. So I don't think that's as readily available, because I had a conversation with a parent today about they were thinking that they could still text their son online on the iPad, because they were doing it at one point during the year, and then about May that went away, and they're like, because an update happened. And so.
I think their phones have to be on the network in order to connect to the iPads.
Yeah.
And last year, Kevin did a really good job. If your item wasn't registered, you couldn't get on the network, and that was frustrating for the kids.
One of the issues we've had, you want to explain that, I mean, if they use the iPads or a computer to talk to another student and say something, we have a lot more control, and we can search a lot more quickly to find out who said what, where, and when, and who was first and who was second, correct?
So
that we're going to be able to look up who used their iPad, because these are school devices.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yes, to answer that question is, so when we have a situation and a student does something on their phone, we're not going into their phone and looking at their phone unless it becomes a criminal matter, and that's a search warrant. This doesn't happen in the school. But where Mr. Elkins is speaking about is like when a student has an issue on their iPad, that's our device. And when you sign the acceptable use policy, we can search histories. We can go in and look at what have you been doing, who have you been. So to that point, we can do those types of things with that. Whereas with this is theirs. We don't touch this.
Did you notice from the visit with Morse if there was like a transition period? Like this is very stressful initially, but did Morse share like after a month or two, things really settled in and it got better for everybody who was nervous?
It's actually been quite predictable because of what Morse had told Galen and I when we went and visited. He said, when you make the policy, when the policy goes through in June, there's going to be a lot of conversation and there's going to be a lot of stuff on social media. And I'm not on social media, but I've heard there's been a lot of stuff on social media. He said, you'll have your meeting and there will probably be not a lot of people that will show up to your meeting, but there will be a lot of stuff on social media. You have the meeting and you kind of share the information and you share it factually and you share that. He said it will die down. He said when you come back to school, there's going to be a lot of stuff on social media. There are going to be students whose heads are going to explode. And Yonder and Morse have said it's going to be a 2-week thing. And then it's going to get into a group. We met with those students in December and they all said, we hate this. But they were all like, it's the best thing for us. So it was like these two things, like they understood it, but they also understood, you know, one girl said, I have battery when I go home on my phone. That was a thing. And then another student said, I'm actually communicating, Galen kind of referenced it, it was the year of hello at Morse High School because they were walking down the halls and students were talking to each other. The students described the school as a more friendly place, but they also, as Mr. Henderson pointed out, well, we don't like it. But it's, you know, because they love their phone.
Sorry, just another quick question then. Knowing the anxiety it provokes in students and the distress it might cause, is there like a little bit more of an alert of having social workers, guidance counselors available those first like few weeks when it might be really tough for some kids?
I think we're gonna be aware at the high school. Our social workers will be, you know, a little bit more on it. I don't want to say edge, but like on guard, looking for those signs. Our staff, when we meet with Yonder at the beginning of the year, that will be a conversation that we have with staff to make sure that staff know what to be looking for. And we're going to offer opportunities. We at Mount Blue High School, we have a thing called academic support block, and there'll be opportunities for those teachers to connect with their individuals, you know, as the year starts. That's just a small group setting where conversations can naturally occur about, you know, I'm really stressed about this phone, Mr. Smith, this is driving me nuts. And then I can kind of point them in the direction that they need to go.
So are we going to share with staff, here are things to look, are they going to get some information?
Yeah,
It
so
says these are some things to look for more anxious.
So that was one of the things,
students.
on the first day of school, we have Yonder coming. And so in that 2 hours, it's an hour or 2 hour presentation that we will be giving to staff, and that will be part of the conversation. And I think working with all of our school counselors and social workers and pulling them in, making sure that we're working with community partners, because I know Kristen Marzocchi was one of the people that had come to, she's a psychiatrist at FMH, and she was really adamant about making sure that we have some supports in place. So we're working on having some of those things in place at the start of the year. Jeff?
Joe, I really appreciate the work that you collectively, and as well as the folks who aren't here, who have looked into this issue over the last few months. One thing I want to be clear on is, will all the students know from day one, from the get-go, what the financial responsibility will be should they damage or lose the pouches, as well as what they may face if they don't comply?
Yes.
With the policy?
On day one, the plan is we bring freshmen into this space right here. So day one is the first day with freshmen. We're going to be running through this with freshmen saying, here is the Yonder pouch. This is what it looks like. We'll go through a lot of the same thing we talked about tonight, including the cost of what happens when you break it. How you avoid that is to make sure that you're locking in and using the device appropriately and making sure that they understand this is their responsibility. I think most of the students are trained up because they know they've got an iPad, and that iPad is a $1,200 device. And with that $1,200 device comes a $60 case as well. And so they know, I mean, they've lived this from their 7th grade year or 6th grade, I'm not even sure when they get iPads. But when they get to the middle school, they've had a very expensive device in their possession to begin with. So I feel like they're gonna understand that. And I'm gonna make it clear when we're talking with students and staff, it's a $40 cost.
Now, is this just for the high school, or does it trickle down?
Yeah, that's a great question. So at the middle school, like, why didn't they do this at the middle school? Why are we doing this here? So at Mount Blue High School, if I want to walk from Doug Hodem's class on the 3rd floor B wing this way and walk to Mimi Henshaw's class in E wing that way, which is the two furthest points, that's about a 4.5 minute walk. And so if my locker happens to be next to Mr. Hodem's class, and my last period is in Miss Henshaw's class, it's not realistic for me to get there, get my stuff, and get out the door. So kids at Mount Blue High School have the opportunity to have a locker, but the locker doesn't live there. So where I'm going with this is, the middle school, they go in the locker. And you know the middle school configuration, they're no further than 50 feet from their locker at any time. So it works for them, that's what works. So it is just a thing here in Mount Blue High School.
But the policy is a district-wide.
The policy language is no cell phones, and it's up to each administrator to decide how they will, what tools they'll put in place. And Yonder was the tool that I felt at Mount Blue High School with Mr. Demons, Mr. Dalrymple, and Mr. Henderson worked the best for us.
And the middle school doesn't have an issue
No,
because of the size and because of the community setup.
yeah, I mean, you've got 4 teachers with kids in they're in a very confined area, whereas at the high school, you got an English class, 3rd floor there, to a tech class, knee wing over there. It's a very different place. I'm not delusional to know that there are a lot more people in the community that might have questions. I ask all of you that came tonight, I thank you for coming, because this means a lot to us, because you can do a lot for us by explaining, hey, if you've got questions, go see Mr. Smith or Mr. Dalrymple, or Mr. Demison or Mr. Henderson, because we'll answer the question. We're not shying away from this. We want to do what we feel is the best for kids. And I will say, I've been in education since 1997, and my time in education, I would say this is probably one of the most detrimental things that I've seen that's happened to students. And I believe that having cell phones put away for the day is the right thing to do. So I would be more than happy to speak to anyone. If you've got friends that have concerns, please have them come see me, and I'll be happy to answer any of their questions in a meeting, privately, whatever they need. So thank you, I appreciate it.